Good afternoon, everybody. Just going to wait a few moments here. I see a number of our participants are logging in. Great, looks like it'll be a popular event today. Lots of participants joining. Great. Well, I wanted to take a quick moment just to thank everybody who is attending another UDI Okanagan webinar today. Today's webinar is entitled Lessons Learned from Building Energy Efficient Buildings, featuring David Ramslie, Shane Worman, Christina Wilson, and Andrew Gaucher. My name is Luke Turi. I am the chair of UDI Okanagan and the executive vice president at Mission Group here in Kelowna. Just wanted to, again, thank everybody. These are, do our best to do these virtual sessions, and I'm very much looking forward to time, hopefully in the not too distant future, that we can do this in person at a lunch event. I will, before I hand things over to our panel, I want to acknowledge our title sponsor today, which is Meiklejohn Architects. Really appreciate them sponsoring today's event. Meiklejohn Architects is a Kelowna-based architectural office with varied sector experience, including office, residential, healthcare, education, and others. The firm has been a leader in sustainable architectural practice in the Okanagan for over 60 years. Jim Meiklejohn became the first LEED accredited architect in the Okanagan in 2004, and in 2008, designed for the BC SPCA in Maple Ridge, Canada's first LEED Gold certified animal shelter. The office completed early research for FP innovations on the market potential of cross-laminated timber prior to its manufacture in Canada, and has completed numerous commercial and residential LEED certified silver and gold projects over the last 15 years. Colin Crabb was the first architect to become a certified passive house designer in Kelowna in 2017. And the BC Energy Step Code regulations are evolving at a rapid pace. So Meiklejohn Architects looks forward to working with their clients who value the long-term health and financial rewards of pursuing local leadership in sustainable design. Very appropriate sponsor for today's conversation. So thank you very much to Meiklejohn Architects. Next, I'm going to introduce our moderator and our panelists for today's discussion. Thank you very much to the four of you who have volunteered your time here, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. So first, Andrew Gaucher, who will help moderate it as well. Andrew, as many of you know, operates McKinley Beach, Catalyst Land Development, and Dynamic Constructors. He's been in the residential development industry for 14 years, having built or developed over 500 homes in that time. He has served on numerous boards, including EO Vancouver, Kelowna Chamber of Commerce, Central Okanagan Economic Development Commission, and of course, UDI Okanagan as a past chair. Welcome, Andrew. David Ramslie is the Vice President of Innovation and Sustainability at Concert Properties, a Vancouver-based real estate development company. He has worked in the field of urban sustainability for more than 15 years as a planner, consultant, and now as a developer. Over his career, he has received numerous awards and commendations, including but not limited to 2017 Canadian Green Building Council Green Building Champion Award for outstanding contributions to advance the green movement in Canada, and in 2019 was inducted as a member of Canada's Clean 50 for contributions to growing Canada's clean economy. Welcome, David. Christina Wilson is the Vice President of Development and Sales at High Street Ventures, a Kelowna-based real estate development company that is on the leading edge of energy efficiency and environmental sustainability. She's been involved in the real estate development industry for over 20 years. Welcome, Christina. And Shane Worman is the founder and president of Worman Commercial and Worman Homes, one of Kelowna's most distinguished building and development companies. He has been involved in the building and real estate development industry for over 29 years, almost 30, Shane, overseeing various commercial and residential projects. Shane has never been shy about doing things a little differently, as long as they are done right. Welcome to Shane. So without any further ado, I will pass things on to Andrew, who will moderate our discussion today. Andrew.
Thanks, Luke. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today to learn a bit about the Energy Step Code. We'll start off with each of the developers on the panel sharing a brief introduction about their experience in energy efficient construction and a couple salient projects. After that, we'll jump into the first portion of our session, which will each of our panelists will address various segments of the Canadian Energy Step Code. The second part of the session will be a discussion format amongst our panelist group on design, development, and construction matters related to the implementation of the Step Code. Time permitting following that, we will also answer any questions that you have at the end of that session. So if you have any, please feel free to share them by typing into the Zoom chat function. I will start the introductions to some projects by sharing a couple that I'm currently working on: Forest Hills at McKinley Beach and Francis Infill. Forest Hills at McKinley Beach is a 52 home enclave within the overall master plan community. Of those 52 homes, all of them will achieve Step Code 2, 3, and 4, the majority of which have already achieved Step Code 3. I'll be talking about some cost implications on that project later. The other project is Francis Infill, which is 2 units in South Pandosy. Those will have both been designed to Step Code 4. I'll pass it on to Dave, who can talk about a couple of his projects next. Dave?
Oh, you couldn't hear me, but because I was
Sorry
muted.
about that.
That's all right. No, it was my fault. So I'll just share my screen here briefly and provide an overview. Concert Properties has a goal of building zero carbon buildings by 2026 in all of our product in the markets we're active in, which is Victoria, Vancouver, and the Greater Toronto area. We currently have 4 projects that are under development or construction, or in design, development, and construction. 3 of these are in the Greater Vancouver area, and 1 of which is in the Greater Toronto area. The first one, which I'm just showing you, the promotional glamour shot for, is North Harbour. It's our newest offering on the North Shore of Vancouver. It's an 8-acre master plan site divided into 4 phases. The first phase of which is going to be built to all Step Code 3, and the second with 1 Step 4 building in which is a rental building, and the rest is condo. And then in the second phase, we're moving all to Step 4 construction. This is there's a minor retail component as well to this. So of the roughly 400,000 square feet in the first phase, roughly about 70,000 of that is retail, and the balance of that is condo. This is a kind of a luxury place product, larger units. As you can see here, lots of big open space balcony, and we think it's a unique product because it's really one of the last waterfront communities available on the North Shore. The other 2 projects that we're active in, if I can just advance my slide, the one you can see up here in the top right-hand corner is a Toronto-based project. It's called our KIP District project. It is it's not specifically within the BC Energy Step Code, but it is conforming to the Toronto Green Standard, which actually uses the same metrics as the BC Energy Step Code. I'm talking about it today, and actually I'll cite this for a lot of my costing information, because when it comes to actually building energy efficient buildings, building in Toronto actually has more in common with building in the Okanagan than building in Vancouver does, just with the cold winters and the hot summers. And then the bottom project you can see here is our Myriad project in Coquitlam. This is a unique project in that it has both a 50-story rental building you can see here, and then a 40-story condo project that is, and sandwiched in between them is the redevelopment of the YMCA for Coquitlam there. So combined about 500 units of housing total, 308 of those being rental units. And actually 100 of those units on the rental side being affordable rental as well too. Unique aspects of these is that, you know, we're extensively using geosource heating for this project in the KIP district. And then we're using some air source heat pumps here as well too for Myriad, which is, you know, kind of a first time for us in terms of using it to serve the majority of the load in the building. All the projects too are using, you know, high performance double glazed windows. We've really, although it may not look it from these renderings, you know, a real effort was made to clamp down on the amount of balcony area on these projects and to rationalize the glazing to get down to about 50% glazing. And the other thing it's I guess a bit unique about this is that in the Toronto example, we're using a precast concrete solution with external insulation on it that is, you know, sort of modular in its approach to its construction. I won't get into the grainy details now about how much more these things cost, but you know, generally the costs are born out of things like better windows, better details and external insulation, and higher efficiency HRV and ERVs. So you know, we're estimating that's about 2% higher in terms of costs. For the higher steps, like a step 4 building where we're getting close to passive house levels of construction there, we are, you know, we don't build the building that isn't going to achieve those targets. So it's tough for us to say precisely what the premium is, but we're guessing it's about 5% of construction costs in terms of the added cost. So with that, I think I'll leave it there, Andrew.
Great, thanks a lot, Dave. Christina, can we move to you to share a couple of the projects that you're working on in step code?
Okay, good. With technology is working. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so here at High Street, we develop, build, and operate multifamily market rental apartments and condos. Our company goal is actually to own and operate 1,600 net zero ready homes by 2024, and we're well on our way to that goal. We've actually completed our first step code 4 building in January in West Kelowna, and we are in the process of just finishing up construction of our second step code 4 building in Penticton, which is a 5-story, 180-unit building. We have 3 projects in different stages of construction on the island that will all be targeting step code, and that totals out to about 600 units there. And we have 2 projects in permitting in the Okanagan that we will also be targeting step code 4. All these projects kind of range from that 4 to 6 stories, wood frame construction, a mixture of condo and market rental.
Thanks again, Christina. And finally, Shane, could you share a couple of the projects you're working on?
So we've actually just completed an 82-unit single. I don't want to call them micros because they're not micros, they're small, but they're bachelor suite units on Benvolin Court. And that one we were shooting for, we're shooting for step 4. And part of what we'll talk about later, maybe we'll get into how hard that is to achieve when you go to smaller units. But we did achieve the equivalency of a step 4 on the building we've just finished. And that's been our first real foray into getting to step code 4. It's certainly, as a company, it's something we believe in that, you know, yes, it will come eventually, but we know now how to do better. So we plan on trying to do that with most, if not all, of our buildings. Yeah.
Super, Shane. Thanks a lot. Now we will move into the questions and answers, or the questions that each of the different panelists will take. Dave's up first. This question is, what is the step code? How does it fit within the sustainability and other historical programs? And what does the step code measure? Dave, over to you.
Well, it just so happens, Andrew, that I prepared some slides on this because someone might have passed me the questions ahead of time. So yeah, you know, what's unique about the BC Energy step code is it's the first building code, or actually even really piece of built environment policy that is focused on addressing the challenges of climate change. So, you know, I don't think anybody in the Okanagan needs to be reminded about sort of the impacts that your region has seen of accelerating climate change over the past decade. But, you know, really what's unique about it and how it's different from, say, the way that we've evolved building codes over the past, well, since they've been around, since the past 40 years, or even other systems like, say, LEED or Built Green, is that the old convention used to be that, you know, there was this incremental approach to building, you know, better than the last code, or being, you know, a percentage better than a certain baseline. And it's, you know, you're kind of doing this forward-looking approach where we're always trying to be 10, 15, 30, 40% better than the current baseline. What's different about the BC Energy Step Code is it starts with a target and then backcasts that performance into and divides it into a number of steps, right? So the end target of the BC Energy Step Code is to build highly efficient buildings that are capable of being net zero energy ready, in that, you know, the energy demands of those buildings are so low that they theoretically could be met with on-site sources or with clean sources of energy like electricity. You know, the BC Step Code has attempts to be elegant in its delivery, right? In that it doesn't require, you know, a huge manual like, say, your ASHRAE codebook, which is, you know, now 2 volumes and well up over 800 pages in terms of looking at all the individual specific guidance it provides. But what it says is it has kind of 4 key components. The first is that all projects with the BC Energy Step Code have to be energy modeled, and then have to meet the 2 core metrics, which is thermal energy demand intensity, which is how much heating does your building require per square meter, a total energy use intensity. Some people say TEUI, I just like EUI personally, which is how much total energy does your building consume, and that includes both heating, but also includes things like plug loads. And then finally, the last kind of prescriptive requirement is that there has to be some air tightness testing, both actually at the Part 9 and Part 3 level. So what's really unique about this is that while I think there's been a lot of air tightness, you know, Canada as a building industry has really been a pioneer in terms of air tightness testing, going back into, you know, the R2000 program. But the BC Energy Step Code is really the first code in North America to require air tightness testing of Part 3 buildings at a larger level. Actually, that's not true. First in Canada, the Seattle Energy Code actually does require air tightness testing. So it's divided into a couple of different, well, it's both Part 3 and Part 9. Part 3 is divided into kind of 3 different areas. So it's wood frame, residential, concrete residential, and then concrete commercial. So there are no institutional requirements yet for the BC Energy Step Code. And then depending on your flavor of building, there could be anywhere from 3 steps to the BC Energy Step Code all the way up to 5. So Part 9 residential has 5 steps, Part 3 concrete residential and wood residential have 4 steps, and Part 3 has 3 steps. There has been some guidance in terms of what's typically lower steps and upper steps. You know, the lower steps being, you know, kind of more of an incremental approach, you know, whether they're like, you know, 30 to 40% better than current code, and your upper steps are getting into kind of that 70% better, or getting into passive house territory in some cases about how their performance is. And, you know, what I would say typically is that, you know, whereas before you could really get out of jail, you know, on these energy efficiency requirements through, you know, really a lot of your HVAC design, and it didn't really pay attention to, you know, basically the composition, programming, and the real architecture of your building. The BC Energy Step Code really makes you focus on those pieces, right? So I think one of the things you'll find probably in this discussion is many of us had to think about things like Shane was talking about, like unit composition and size, or the amount of glazing area on the side of the building, which is prompting new questions that we haven't had to think about before. So I'll leave it there, Andrew, I guess, unless there's maybe another question for you on this.
No, sure, that's great. moving on to the next question, which I'll start off with regards to single family, and then Dave will have him back to talk about high rise. And he touched on this in his introduction. The question is, how expensive is the step code? So I'll just share a presentation here with you all. So for this question for single family, I'll be using the project we're building right now, or mostly build out, Forest Hills at McKinley Beach. So Forest Hills is 52 units, many of which have the beautiful view you see behind you, or on the picture rather. They average about 1,650 square feet with 3 different building models. There's a walkout, which you're looking at, walk up, and 2-story models. The first stage of Forest Hills achieved step code 2. And the stages we're building right now, stage 2 and stage 3, which is the final phase, have achieved both step codes 2 and 3, or sorry, 3 and 4 rather. Sort of cutting to the chase with the cost on these, the energy code investment ranging from 2, 3, and 4 has been about $5,000, $8,000, and $15,000 respectively. Those are all before the Fortis rebates. Some of the considerations, sorry?
Andrew, sorry to interrupt. I think your screen share needs to be put up on the screen.
Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. It would help if you guys could see what I was talking about. Is that visible to you now, Luke?
Yep, you bet.
Sorry about that. So yeah, sorry. This is the view I was mentioning. So as I mentioned, it's 52 detached homes. Average is about 1,650 square feet. 3 different home models. So walk out, walk up, and 2-story models. The reason I mentioned that is each home model does have to be, built and modeled a little differently in terms of the energy consumption. Step codes 2, 3, and 4 are achieved, and respectively with those different step code levels, the investment has been about $5,000, $8,000, $8,000, and $15,000 for the Fortis rebates that are available. So a few of the considerations in building these homes that we've had to take. What I've found is air tightness is by far the most challenging to achieve. You have to get to basically less than 2 air exchanges per hour for step code 3, and then step code 4 is, I believe, below 1.5 air exchanges. Some of the other upgrades we've implemented in those costs is triple pane windows. There are better films and gases that are available these days that you can achieve a lot of it with dual pane, which is all of our windows are traditionally dual pane. Air source heat pumps, increased insulation at levels in both the ceiling and the walls, and electric hot water tanks. Step code 4, we've been installing everything mentioned for step code 3, plus exterior insulation on foundation walls, additional insulation beneath the on-grade slabs, and increased energy efficiency heat pumps. I wanted to share this slide because there's some great incentives right now that are available through Fortis. I'm not sure if these are permanent. As you can see on the left here, there's different levels for the different step codes. Based on, depending upon which level the home achieves, there's different levels. So, for example, step code 4, you can get $6,000 rebated back from Fortis after the home is complete and certified. So $15,000, it's a majority of the investment back. That's everything that I have for single family costs. I'll let Dave take over and talk a little bit about high-rise costs now. Dave?
You got to be quicker on that trigger finger with my my screen share and my turning my mic on. Yeah, I gave a little bit of this away at the beginning. I described a little bit of these projects in detail already, but what I'll start to say in terms of some of the costs. In some cases, the soft costs don't need to be higher in terms of the consultants you're choosing. One of the things that we found to be really beneficial in terms of developing these projects is by moving as much of the energy modeling up front as possible. You know, even if this is, you know, not going to be the final energy model you may use for compliance, but even just doing some explorations and testing your design to make sure that you're not putting something forward that's going to be, you know, expensive to change later. So, you know, whether that's adding an extra $10,000 up front to do some parametric modeling. You know, I really recommend people who are considering building a tower under the BC Energy Step Code that they do this. You know, parametric modeling has kind of come into vogue in terms of like, you know, running thousands of simulations and then using some kind of databasing tool to sort of look at a range of options. And there's lots of free tools out there. I'd be happy to do a screen share on that maybe later if people are interested. But it really helps you make decisions on how to rationalize your glazing. So in many cases, we found that we need to be between 40% and 50% glazed on our towers in order to meet at least Step Code 3. I mentioned that the costs for the upper steps are in the 5% range. You know, Andrew was right. We can in the high-rise world get to Step 3 with double paned high performance units, but that's at the very top end of their performance. But to get to Step 4, you are going to need triple pane windows, and you're going to need a punched window system. You can't get any window wall system that will get you there, or at least none that we found. And so, you know, be prepared for those costs because they are substantially higher. The other thing I will say, it's kind of my bottom point there, but it's why we're talking about Step Code 4 projects. One of the things we found is that your higher efficiency HRVs and ERVs, and by higher efficiency, I mean like in the 90% range, are much bigger and more expensive than the typical HRV, ERV that we were used to putting in our units. So, you know, they were typically running about 65% efficient. The 90% efficient units are much bigger. And so looking for horizontally oriented units that are not, vertically oriented units is really important, because if you're trying to mount these in the ceilings of your units, your ceiling drops get really low really fast. So that's something to consider. And then the last thing I would say is just, you know, it's hard to quantify the costs on this, but really pushing your envelope consultant for those better details. And that gets to also what Andrew said, a common theme here too is the air tightness testing, right? So whether that's detailing your parapet, all of your entrance details, your window wraps, all those things become really critical. And it also becomes, you know, crucial in terms of just making the additional investments you may be making in your exterior insulation. You know, if you're putting, you know, 3, 5, 6 inches of exterior insulation out there, you can lose all the benefit of that if your details aren't in good shape. So you know, those are our kind of key insights. We think that the costs are between 2 and 3%. So which was a bit of a pleasant surprise at the beginning of this. And as we said, you know, we're probably 5.5% on the Step 4 buildings. And that's it for me on that.
Thanks, Dave. The next question is with you as well. What are some technical considerations that you can share with us for the Step Code and sustainable building in general?
Yeah, I touched on it a bit, and just because I mentioned it previously, I think it's really important. Maybe I'll even just try to walk the technological tightrope here and show it in real time. This is what I was talking about with regards to parametric modeling. So this is one tool that's for free here. It's called Energy Pathfinder. You can find it at this URL, which is buildingpathfinder.com. And what it allows you to do is, this one is specifically for multi-unit residential buildings, but there are row house and single family archetypes available. And it allows you to select the metrics on this side, which are, you know, if we want to hit a Step Code 3, we need a TEDI of 30, we need a TUI of 100, and then there's no GHG requirements here. But what that does is it then helps you to narrow all the big kind of pieces of your building out. So things like, you know, do I have a complex form or, you know, sort of a more typical environment? Do I want to go with kind of middle of the road, high performance building windows or higher ones? it's going to be very difficult. One of the biggest kind of key considerations we found, and probably no secret to any interior builder, is that getting the effective wall R values really up above the kind of the R9 range, even into like R12 territory, is really difficult, because the new calculations aren't just rated performance, but it's the effective performance of the wall. And then, looking at other things like windows. So what you can see here is, just by selecting some different options, this can start to tell you sort of like down here, what are the different kind of combinations of big design moves I need to make to start to get close to hitting these various different step code levels. So it used to be that, you'd get your energy model done at kind of the end of the process, whereby you're kind of validating all your design assumptions and kind of crossing your fingers, hoping that you make it. I think what we're going to really see with more step code projects is that you're going to need to do this modeling up front, so that you're ending up in a place you don't want to be on the back end. The other thing I would say, another key insight about building the step code, and it's probably even just the kind of the future of where we're going here, is like decarbonization is the future. And so not only, I mentioned that the BC Energy step code is really designed as a sort of like a climate change focused policy. But, as you get into these higher performance envelopes, it does really start to make the use of heat pumps more viable. And so, getting off gas, that's going to drive your decarbonization. But all of these heat pumps are incredibly efficient. So they really are very beneficial for driving down your total energy use calculations as well too. So you'll find that, a 300% efficient, 400% efficient heat pump is going to be, one of your biggest or most influential ways to really drop down that total EUI number in a big way. And I know that the climate in the Okanagan too, you already see actually quite a few heat pumps being used in the residential context. And I'd say that the biggest kind of the new world order is going to be using some of those solutions for domestic hot water as well as for heating. So, we're seeing these CO2 heat pumps from Sandon, great efficiency, and can do the hot water as well too. This ductless mini split heat pump systems also becoming more economical and easier to install, and can also in some cases be used in environments where you're getting down to -6, -7 in some years. And then I've already talked a little bit about the domestic hot water as well too, getting that onto a heat pump system. And then I think on your bigger projects, you're going to see a return to geo exchange as well too, because that has a huge impact on the overall efficiency of your HVAC system. So I'll leave that there.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Dave. Yeah, I would definitely share or add on to your decarbonization point. One of the challenges we talk a lot about at our company is moving away from foams. So when we get into step code 5 and beyond, call it in 5 to 10 years, I think one of the challenges that we have to start thinking about is moving away from foams. They're high carbon footprint, but they're used extensively for insulating purposes right now. So one more thing to think about. Chris or Shane, next question for you, Shane. Can you share some of the design considerations of the step code and energy efficient construction design that you've implemented here in Kelowna?
I think the biggest, hear me okay? I got the tech right too? Lovely. I think the biggest change that we're going to see is at least in the short term, until technology catches up with some of the building methods, is a real change in the shape of our buildings. So we're going to end up with simplified massing. We're going to have to look a lot harder at orientation. One of the things that you see when you're looking at our typical good architectural design is a lot of ins, outs, ups, downs, cantilevers, all sorts of variations in a building's facade. And all of that hurts dramatically when you're looking at trying to prioritize the envelope, which is really what the difference between this code and step code now compared to what we've had in the past, right? Before, as mentioned, we could achieve it through heating systems and cooling systems. Now the envelope becomes a priority. So we're going to see a real change. Like I said, in massing and orientation, we're going to have to look at where our windows are facing, how much energy. You know, the glass towers of today will likely not be present in the future. You know, concrete buildings with slabs projecting out will either need to be changed or designed differently. Again, there's some good technologies coming that will help with the thermal breaks. Unit density, I touched on that a little bit before, but you know, a bigger footprint with less wall area is going to be helpful in achieving high step code results. One of the things that happened on our Ben Vollen project is with our smaller units, we actually ended up with a challenge because our corridor makeup air system, with having a large number of doors per hallway, meant that we needed a larger makeup air system. So ironically, although we were building smaller units, which are really energy efficient, heating and cooling our corridors is based on how many doors. And then the other thing that's a bit weird about the step code is it's actually measured based on a square meter basis. So even though we're building smaller units, which are more affordable and actually efficient, we're getting penalized under the way the calculations happen on the step code. Fenestration. So we talked, you know, they already talked about that a little bit as far as you know, the window to wall ratios, but those are certainly going to have to come down into that 50, even 40% if you're looking at step code 5. So that gets back to the, you know, the glass tower being a tough thing to achieve step codes on. Looking at within those windows, again, upgrading of the windows. So we, you know, in our step 4 building, we went to all triple glazed windows. That's actually, ironically, that's one of the cheaper ways that we've found that you can increase your energy demand is by looking at increasing your windows. And so many of the companies now are looking at it and embracing it. And the good news is it's a proven technology because it's been used in the prairies for the cold for a long time. So in the Okanagan, we're finding the need for it for more so for the heat than the cold and the heat gain. Another way with the fenestration is looking at window screening and shading. So again, so now we can say, okay, well, in the hot summer, we've got shading over the window, which blocks the light. But in the winter, we actually want some of that heat gain to heat the units on its own. So there's quite a bit of that you're going to have to consider within your architectural build. Building our values, so coming up with new details. So architecturally, it's going to look different, but we're also going to need new details for our siding guys, for our exterior finishers. You know, they're going to become envelope specialists, or going to need to become envelope specialists instead of just being able to apply siding. Especially as you add exterior insulation of things, now you've got to figure out how you put a window liner around that window. Reducing a thermal bridging is another big one. So again, this goes back to building design, but it also goes back to how you build a deck. So in the old days, you know, again, in concrete construction, you cantilevered your slab out. In wood frame, probably you put a wood ledger along the side. Today, looking to achieve step 4 and eventually step 5, maybe you're going to have to look at having 2 connection points with the beams running the other way and the joists running opposite, so that your insulation can run right in behind your deck system. So lots of things like that. And then the big one that's already been touched on is that air tightness. So back to that one being one of the hardest things to achieve, because there's so much involved in it when you look at it. But moving, you know, one thing we've found in our design is moving all of that to the outside helps a lot. But then you've really got to pay attention and teach all your trades how to do those details properly and effectively. And then the old school method of achieving better energy efficiency was the heating and cooling systems. And obviously that's going to be a change too. So starting to look at things like our whole building, you know, one of our earlier apartments, we would do a PTEC unit. So if any of you know what that is, it's the unit in the hotel that pulls air right from outside and leaves a big hole in the side of your building. Well, those are a thing of the past when you're looking at your air tightness. So you're going to be looking at a lot more mini splits and that type of technology. And again, what's great is it's a technology that already exists in other places in the world. And so we're not having to reinvent it. And one of the things that Dave touched on briefly was temperature range that these are being used for. We're now getting some superheat and super cooling ones that we can actually do down to -35, which that means then we don't need backup electric heat. So again, just as far as balancing costs, we don't have to put in that mini split and the baseboard. We can just go with a little more expensive mini split, and we get the system we need. So I think those are kind of the main points that you're going to have to consider. I think Christina's going to touch a little bit on the process, because that's certainly something that we'll also have to change as designers and builders, as we're going to have to figure out or learn how to do things differently.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Before you turn off there, is Ben Volen done for anybody who's interested to take a drive-by and get a sense of what the design and massing looks like in that case?
Yep, Ben Volen Court's been occupied now since December. So it is done, it is simple, and I did get some pushback from city folk in the original design because it is a big square box, as one of them said, with a couple of angles coming out. But, you know, I mean, again, to me, the architectural style is just different than what they were used to. It's not bad. It's certainly much more European in what you're going to see, right? Deeper windows, simpler buildings.
Got it. Thanks, Shane. And then for the last question is to Christina. Christina, can you share with us how hard has it been to design and build to the step code?
Yeah, thanks. I think a lot of what you'll hear me talk about is similar to what Dave and Shane touched on as well. You know, we've been doing this for about 4 years, and we're still learning and figuring it out. It's definitely a challenge, and it takes time from the design through to the construction to make it happen. We have a really great team who's worked really hard to get us where we are at today. I would say that don't underestimate the time and effort to get there. There really is no silver bullet, like you heard Shane and Dave talk about. There's different ways to do different things, and you need to factor in that time and the effort to get there. You think you have it figured out for what building, and you may change the orientation of it slightly or add an extra window, and all of a sudden you're not going to be meeting the step code or where you wanted to on the step code. So different things can definitely factor into it, and it's definitely a constant learning process and evolution. Dave touched on it, you're going to have an energy model, you're going to have a bigger team to manage that's going to get on board earlier, and you may not have had an energy modeler before, and I think I agree with Dave, it's important to get them in the beginning, running the model kind of based on your specs, and that's going to dictate where you land on the step code. From there, you can kind of figure out what levers you can pull, running different energy conservation measures to see where it can get you to on the step code. And this takes time. Running the model does take time, so you just need to factor that into your schedule as well. Dave touched on the high efficient energy mechanical equipment. So mechanical design equipment is important. There are different levels of efficiency, like Dave mentioned. So just paying attention to that as you're going through the process. And the envelope, it's the largest part of step code, and you really do need a robust envelope, and those details, like Shane mentioned, are really important, and they're challenging as you go throughout it. So you really have to pay time and attention to those. We aren't constructing the way we used to. So we're on the construction side, you need the construction team to be on board. There needs to be a high level of attention to those details as they're being put together during construction. What we found, mock-ups, it was a great way to work through some of these penetration details to ensure that things are being sealed properly so they don't affect your air tightness. Communication is key to everyone entering and working on your job site. You have a lot of different trades coming in to work on your buildings, and educating those trades about the building and what the energy targets are and what the goals are really important. For us, we implemented an air tightness orientation that we made every trade take when they were first stepping onto our job sites. We also posted notices around the site, kind of reminding trades, this is an airtight building. You can't go and just drill holes, random holes in the envelope anymore. And about the airtightness testing itself, it was sort of touched on earlier. For us, we do it 2 times throughout, and I would strongly encourage that. We do it pre-drywall, and then once the building is complete, prior to obviously people occupying it. These tests take time, and the building needs to be empty while they're happening. You have to fully seal the building. Nobody can be in or out while the test is going on. So you need to ensure you allow for that in your construction schedule. And you're going to have bumps along the way. You know, our first step code project, we ran into an issue with the air barrier system with the roof. We typically don't have many roof penetration, sorry. And during the design, we were more focused on the wall penetrations because, of course, you have a lot of those. And when we started roughing in on the top floor, we realized that each one of our electrical lighting boxes was actually penetrating the air barrier system as we put our insulation in the joist cavities. So you have 5 light fixtures per suite, 20 suites per floor. That's an extra 100 penetrations into your air barrier system that we didn't account for, and I can tell you it did not work in our model. So we ended up dropping the ceiling, creating a service cavity, which that of course added extra cost and time as we worked through the issue. So just remembering it is a learning process. It's not easy, it takes time. You need a really dedicated team, you need more people up front, and you really do have to pay close attention to those details. You can't cut corners, and it's really important. It's going to help you along the way for sure.
Super, thanks for that, Christina. So we've heard from several people that the more work we can do on this stuff up front before we get too deep into the design, it looks like it'll be easier for all of us to achieve. Now we're going to move on to the discussion format. So can I ask all of the panelists to turn on their cameras and mics simultaneously? The first question that we will speak with the panelists about is, what area of sustainable construction provides you the most inspiration or excitement over the next 5 years? Jump in whenever you like.
I can go. I just spoke, but I can go. For myself, honestly, it's the team collaboration and the learning piece. You know, it's exciting when you're faced with a challenge and you get a group of people in the room and you start brainstorming and trying to figure out how to make something work. And when you figure it out, it feels really good. Obviously, it's the right thing to do for the environment as well. So it's just a win-win.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I'll go back to, I love the design challenge. I think that coming up with interesting buildings with simpler facades is actually going to be great. I think it's going to, you know, just like anything as fads go, you know, if we look at what's being built today, it all looks the same for this last 5 years because that's the style that we're doing. And I think the next 5 and 10 will provide us with a whole different style of building. And I think that's going to be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I build on that. You know, I think that we've also, you know, the step code kind of also makes you ask these questions around how do we simplify our building forms, and how do we also, you know, achieve those better air tightness levels. And I think, you know, that's also, and then I think the other question that is also on a lot of people's minds is too about the embodied carbon of our buildings as well too. And that's kind of leading us to think about, you know, is it, you know, modular or even these semi-modular or like, you know, kind of panelized construction techniques, right? That could be a big benefit in terms of achieving, you know, better air tightness, lower thermal bridging, maybe even speeding up, you know, the time on site. But will probably take more time in terms of the design aspects of it. But I think that's a really exciting piece that hasn't really that is brand new for our industry, right? So, you know, this idea of you know, whether it's CLT or other methods of building, I think that's going to be exciting to see where that technology and how that affects our design and construction as a whole.
Yeah, Shane, I never thought about it from the design perspective, in that, you know, you can drive around Kelowna and just based on the design, you can always see, or probably any market, you can see, you know, roughly at what time period each of those different houses or buildings were constructed. So very much so, I'm sure we're going to go back and the first 5 years of step code is going to look like X. And then as we evolve our technologies and design knowledge, then it'll start to look like Y and whatnot. So that maybe will be where we go after the current traditional modern design theme. It will be step code theme.
And I think it will be, you know, and especially for a period of time until the technology catches up. Because right now, you know, we're moving into a time when our industry has to shift. And I don't mean, us as developers and designers, but definitely as builders. And that's the challenge we see, right? Is finding trades that are ready to embrace this versus trades that don't want to change. And, you know, being at the older end of the scale of hopefully people in this business, you know, I'm leaning more towards, oh God, do I really have to change? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's about time. And in fairness, you know, we know the old methods. So I think that's the way I would hope people embrace it, which is, hey, we've been doing this a certain way for a certain amount of time. It's going to take me a job or two. I'm probably going to lose money on a job or two when I'm figuring this out. But once I've got it figured out, you know, I'm going to be the leader in this field. And that's what I said before about how I think that people like, you know, will become envelope specialists, not just siding guys, not just brick guys. It will be, you know, the whole exterior envelope from, you know, the insulation to the vapor barrier to the air barrier to the, yeah.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So the next discussion question, what is one of the greatest challenges developers and builders face in implementing the STEP code today?
I think Christina hit on it well. I think, you know, building it into your schedule, right? And I think also changing your mindset, right? I think those of us who maybe been building like LEED buildings for years or built green buildings for years, you know, a couple of our people on our construction team and development team just thought, well, we've got this figured out. We've been building good buildings for a long time. But, you know, the STEP code has just different rules, and it's fundamentally a different approach. And the closest thing to it is kind of passive house construction, right? And so, you know, the bag of tricks you used to rely on before aren't going to really help you, and you need to kind of rely on a new bag of tricks. And I think so just allowing for that learning process, and definitely upfront, you know, involving your architects and your energy modeler in that planning time. And then as Christina said too, like, you know, the air tightness testing, I mean, it happens typically like right before occupancy, right? And we all know what a calm, cool, collected time that is, where we're all our best selves and no one's panicking, and you need to get everybody out of the building really to prep for the air tightness test. If it's a big building, you need a weekend almost to prepare for the whole test and then run the test. And, you know, people are working into the night to make that happen. So, and then, you know, if you don't pass, like there's work to be done, right? So, I mean, there's no real pass or fail, but like, you know, if you have big issues, then, you know, there's work to be done, right?
I think one of the other big challenges that we're going to have is that the STEP code is not prescriptive. Mm-hmm. So it's easy when you have a set of rules in front of you and you can achieve them. When there's 100 ways to achieve it, or 50 or whatever that number is, it gets complicated fast. I mean, just looking at the model that Dave pulled up, anyone else understand that little graph? Right? And you know, that was put together by somebody that's been studying it for years. But I'm not actually joking, because, you know, we're going to have people at different places in their journeys. And that is even the people doing the work for us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're going to bring people on that are going to make mistakes, just like we as constructors are going to make mistakes during this process. So I think, you know, that early design will add a whole bunch of extra challenges, but hopefully if you find people that are reputable and good to work with, they can take some of that out for you as well.
Yeah, and I think, Shane, you're going to even find as changes building to building, right? Like, you know, you mentioned your challenge on, you know, building a building that is, you know, with 450 square foot suites as the predominant building or predominant suite in your mix is going to be different than if you just did a project, you're coming off, you know, 800 square foot suites, right? And you're going to find, well, the solutions that I used on the last project may not serve me well on this project, right? So I think it is going to be, it's just a different mindset in terms of how we put things together.
And so many of the energy modelers that are available and that have been doing it a while are from Toronto or Vancouver. And the Okanagan is a different beast altogether.
Right.
And in fairness, you know, from what I understand, this is a very limited knowledge comment, but, you know, we have a lot of trouble achieving a STEP code designed for the coastal climate. And there's been some modifications made to it for us in the Okanagan, but it is, as I understand it, some of the things are almost impossible for us to achieve because of the different things we have here as climatically than they do at the coast. So,
and I think to build on Shane's point, resource availability, you know, you're going to need an energy modeler, and there's not a lot of them out there. So it's definitely a challenge. You know, you also need envelope consultants, and so those are not easy to come by, and as more people need them, those resources are going to be limited. So I think that's definitely going to be a challenge for everybody moving forward.
Right on. Thanks, everybody. Just have one last question here, and we're going to move on to our networking session. This question: how can municipalities support and work with developers and builders in the STEP code? And I'm just going to quickly jump in. Ryan Smith from the City of Kelowna was kind enough to share with us that the city will be making sure our new design guidelines as part of the OCP 2040 do take into consideration the necessary changes to implement the STEP code into account. So he unintentionally answered one of our questions for us, but just quickly, if I could ask each of the panelists to maybe spend 30 seconds on any thoughts they have on how municipalities can be partners in this journey.
one of the things we're finding at higher step code levels is floor to floor heights are getting pushed, right? So I think whether it's because of, just where you have to put your ERV, HRV, that's in some cases, I would say on, a little bit of flexibility on your 6-story mid-rise stuff, 6 to 10-story mid-rise, but, over 30 floors, that could be problematic. So I think that maybe you might see some people coming back on flexibility on floor to floor heights. Not pushing for the same amount of glazing that we actually in some cases in the city of Toronto, we were fighting with the urban design guidelines who wanted a very transparent expression on the front of the building, and we couldn't meet that and also meet our obligations from the city's Office of Energy Efficiency. So I think just some increased. It's good to hear that Kelowna's thinking about melding both those passive design techniques into their OCP guidance as well too. And I don't know if Kelowna has it or not, but these buildings are going to require thicker walls. So if there are exclusions in terms of being able to, not count those thicker walls as density on site, I think that's going to be, that would be very useful as well too. But again, I'm not super knowledgeable about the Okanagan regulatory environment.
Yeah, and I think, I've been in quite a few discussions around the new OCP, and there's certainly, as Ryan mentioned, a consideration for that. I think that they're going to have to be even more open than they think in some ways, especially in the short term. But a lot of it is just about re-educating people as far as what's considered good architecture. And then the other one that may or may not become a challenge is private open space, because decks are going to be more difficult to do for sure, depending on the, Dave, you mentioned one of your projects, you already had to size down decks. So, within our, within the, I guess it's the zoning bylaw, right? There's a certain requirement for private open space. So some of that, and I think already we have that designed in, but some flexibility around how that happens, whether it's rooftop, whether it's common versus private, because obviously the bigger common ones over top of parkades and on rooftops are going to be easier to achieve than the individual decks.
Yeah, I sort of echo both Dave and Shane's comments. Building articulation is more of a challenge. And a bit of a flip side, if, Kelowna's moving to this step 3, and we work in different municipalities all over. And I think incentivizing builders and developers to push there faster, so maybe potentially fast tracking permits might be something that kind of can drive the industry to move there a little quicker, because it seems to be something that people, I think, not knowing about it are hesitant to wade into it, and that might be a way to push the industry a little faster in different areas.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to pass the baton back to Luke now, who's going to close us off and take us to the next part of the session. Thanks again for everyone attending today.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much to all of the speakers for joining us. Thank you for moderating the session, Andrew. Super practical stuff. Saw a lot of good engagement in the Q&A as well. And so just want to remind everybody that, as always, we'll have a recording of the event made available on the UDI website shortly. I want to also, again, thank our sponsor, Meiklejohn Architects, for sponsoring today's event as well. And also, as the slide shows here, if you have any suggestions for future events, comments about today's events, or any questions about UDI as an organization, contact information for Jennifer Dixon there, our executive director, is on the screen. One thing that we're doing a little bit differently here, I know that we're up against time, but for those of you who do have some time, we're going to experiment with a virtual digital networking platform. One of the things that we miss, of course, in our in-person events is the ability to converse before and after the session. So we've been experimenting with a platform called wonder.me. And for the members that are available here in the webinar, all of you will receive an email now with instructions to access the wonder.me platform. We'll also add it into the chat function here in Zoom. You'll get an event link with any technical issues. So it's a digital networking session, and it's designed to let you actually move around as an avatar to join different conversations in the virtual room. And as you move away from and in towards different groups, you'll automatically join the video feed of those conversations. We've created 3 separate rooms, which I think is great. So we have a board meet and greet. We're hosted by a UDI board member, Andrew Bruce. Thank you, Andrew, for doing that. Speakers Corner is going to be hosted by today's speakers or part of the panel. And not many of you will be surprised, the UDI bar is going to be hosted by Kevin Johnson, another UDI board member. So thank you, Kevin, for hosting the bartending initiatives. The platform we're using is designed for desktops, so it's actually not going to be available for iPads or iPhones just yet, or similar devices like that. Ideally, you'd use Chrome as a web browser or Microsoft Edge, but all of this is in that information. So we're testing this. It might not be perfect. We're trying to do something maybe just a little bit fun this time around. And so I'll add this to the chat. And for those of you who need to stay on for troubleshooting, it will all be available to you here. And also just check your email for those of you who directly registered for the event. And Jennifer will stay on to the Zoom link here if there's any issues with moving over to this platform, but it should be in the chat now. Again, it's wonder.me. You'll enter it through your web browser. So once you've joined there, you can step off the Zoom call. We'd be really interested to see and hear from our membership if you enjoyed that virtual space, and it might be something that you might want to look at for other events that you host. So look forward to seeing you there in that virtual space. Again, thank you everybody for attending today's webinar, and I hope you stay well. Thanks very much.